Welcome to the Ghost Towns. Silent streets and ruined buildings offer a glimpse into the lives of once thriving communities. Come and have a look. Belchite is known for having been the scene of one of the symbolic battles of the Spanish Civil War, the Battle of Belchite. As a result of the fighting, the town was destroyed. Instead of rebuilding it, the Francisco Franco regime decided to create a new town next door, leaving intact the ruins of the previous one as a reminder of the Civil War and of what were considered excesses of the defeated side. The complex, today abandoned and partly closed to the passage of people, is known as Pueblo Viejo de Belchite. It has the titles of a very noble, loyal and heroic town, and it holds the Laureate Cross of San Fernando that Franco awarded it. Belchite has long been a strategic town since it was conquered in 1118 and established as a fortress commune for knights dedicated to crusades. In 1809 it was the scene of a battle between France and Spain in the Peninsula War, but it was in 1937 that saw its bloodiest conflict. Republican forces sought to capture the Aragon regional capital Saragossa, and at the height of the conflict had 80,000 infantry about with artillery and tanks, prompting the nationalists fearing a march on Madrid to move 100,000 troops to the province. On the Republican side, international fighters also were there. The township's water supply was cut, those trapped inside starved or were shelled from the hills before house-by-house battles raged in the final week of August and first week of September. After the war, Franco ordered the whole town be abandoned and left untouched as a living memorial to the dead, with a new Belchite constructed. The church of San Martin de Tours still stands with frescoes still visible in the devastation, as does the once impressive church of San Agustin eerie at night, as now it's home to bats, like the convent of San Rafael now overgrown with agave and overrun with goats. The clock tower is a central feature and was where a dozen women and children fled for refuge during the war. On the outskirts of town, an 18th century monastery still stands as a roofless ruin. Bodie is a depopulated of the Mono County, California, United States. The place is considered a historic district in this country. In the middle of the 19th century, mining activity in the western part of the Sierra Nevada began to decline. For this reason, the Gambesinos looked for better opportunities on the east side. One of them was William S. Bodie, who discovered a vein of gold in 1859 at the site later known as Bodie Bluff. His surname was taken to baptize the nascent town that would rise in that place. At the end of 1870, the town reached its peak. At that time, one of the mines, the Standard, yielded considerable quantities of the precious metal. In fact, some 30 fields produced about $400,000 a month altogether. On the other hand, the harsh winters claimed some lives, as well as the accidents in the excavations. In 1878, Bodie reached 5,000 inhabitants, an amount that would double the following year. Along with the growth of its population, saloons, restaurants, brothels and an opera house were installed, newspapers also circulated, and churches, benches, and a school were built. Due to the scarcity of wood in the surroundings, a railway company was organized to transport it to the town. Workers were hired for the installation of the rails. At the same time, many began to settle in the vicinity of Mono Lake. Bodie's decline began in 1882 with the bankruptcy of the mining companies, causing the population to start migrating. Despite everything, two companies joined in 1887 to continue operating, and the local fields were among the first where electricity was installed in the country. In the years 1892 and 1898 the town suffered fires. Around 1915, businessman James Stewart Kane established a series of businesses, among them the transport of timber across Mono Lake, and also the administration of a mining field. Again a fire swept through the city in 1932, leaving it 95% damaged. The town continued to function in the Great Depression era, but local mines were underperforming. The last of these closed operations shortly after World War II. Its small inhabitants died around this time and Bodie became a ghost town. It would be in 1960 that Bodie was designated a historic district of the United States. The place is one of the best preserved depopulated areas in the country, and in total it houses about 200 buildings, although only 10% can be considered original. For the recreation of the history of Bodie there is a museum, as well as sightseeing tours of the old mines. The National Historical Park Chaco Culture, better known as Canyon of the Chaco or Chaco Canyon, is a National Historic Park of the United States and Heritage of UNESCO, which is home to the densest and most exceptional concentration of towns in the southwestern United States. The park is located in northwestern New Mexico, between Albuquerque and Farmington, in a relatively inaccessible valley cut by the Chaco Wash. Containing the largest amount of ancient ruins in northern Mexico, the park preserves one of the most important cultural and historical areas in America. Between 900 and 1150, Chaco Canyon was an important cultural center of the Anasazi. The inhabitants of the region obtained blocks of sandstone and transported wood from great distances, putting together 15 important complexes that continued to be the largest constructions in North America until the 19th century. Many Chacoan constructions were aligned to capture the solar and lunar cycles, requiring generations of astronomical observations and centuries of coordinated expert construction. Climate change is believed to have led to Chacoan emigration and eventual abandonment of the canyon, beginning with a 50-year drought in 1130. Located in the arid and inhospitable region of the Cuatro Esquinas, the Chacoan cultural sites are fragile. Fears of an eruption caused by tourists led to the closure of the Fajada Hill to the public. The sites are considered sacred ancestral homelands of the Hopi, Navajo, and Pueblo peoples, who continue to maintain oral traditions recounting their historical migration from the Chaco and their spiritual relationship with the land. While the preservation of parks conflicts with the religious beliefs of the natives, the representatives of the tribes work closely with the National Park Service to share their knowledge and respect for the heritage of the Chaco culture. Herculaneum was an ancient Roman city in the region of Campania, southern Italy. In its time it was smaller, but its more worldly merchants were richer, more cultured and intellectual than the elite of neighboring Pompeii is known to have been preserved, the same as Pompeii, buried in the ashes of the eruption of the Vesuvius of the 24th of August of the year 79 D. Many of its inhabitants perished due to the pyroclastic flow of the eruption. As the city was closer to the volcano than Pompeii, it reached a higher temperature, so the victims were instantly reduced to scorched skeletons. It was declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO, along with Pompeii and other archaeological sites in the area, in 1997. In 1709, Emmanuel Mauricio de Lorena, Duke of Elbeuf, while building his residence on the coast of Portici, heard of a man who had discovered ancient marbles and columns while digging a well in the nearby town of Racina. The Duke bought his farm and began digging underground wells and galleries and excavated statues, columns and marbles that he used for his residence in Portici, which he also gifted to his friends, family and monarchs across Europe. The excavations, carried out by Roque Joaquín de Alcubierre, began, in present-day Herculano, a suburb of Naples, in 1738. The elaborate publication of the Antiquities of Herculaneum exposed under the patronage of King Charles V of the Two Sicilies had a major effect on the incipient European neoclassicism. At the end of the 18th century, a great diversity of objects began to be discovered in Herculaneum, such as wall paintings, tripods, braziers, bronze statues, perfume bottles and pottery. Hundreds of skeletons of inhabitants who had taken refuge in boathouses were found in 1980. These excavations carried out in the port area of Herculaneum revealed more than 200 skeletons of various ages and social status. The most famous of the luxurious Herculanean villas is the Villa de los Paparos, identified as the lavish retreat overlooking the sea that Lucio Calpurnio Pisanino, Julius Caesar's father-in-law, had built. Kayaköy, anciently known in Greek as Karmelissos, shortened to Lebessos and pronounced in modern Greek as Levissi, is presently a village 8 kilometers south of Fethiye in southwestern Turkey in the old Lycia province. From ancient Greek, the town name shifted to Koine Greek by the Roman period, evolved into Byzantine Greek in the Middle Ages, and finally became the modern Greek name still used by its townspeople before their final evacuation in 1923. In late antiquity, the inhabitants of the region had become Christian and, following the East-West Schism with the Catholic Church in 1054 AD, they came to be called Greek Orthodox Christian. These Greek-speaking Christian subjects, and their Turkish-speaking Ottoman rulers, lived in relative harmony from the end of the turbulent Ottoman conquest of the region in the 14th century until the early 20th century, when the rise of nationalism led to persecution of minorities within the Ottoman realm and the eventual creation of modern Turkey by the Turkish national movement. The sufferings of Greeks and other Christian minorities in the Ottoman Empire during World War I led to the almost total depopulation of the town's 6,500 Greek inhabitants by 1918. These former inhabitants were bereaved of their properties and became refugees in Greece, or they died in Ottoman forced labor battalions. Following these events, the Allied victors in World War I authorized the occupation of Smyrna, which still had many Greek inhabitants, by Greece in May 1919. This led to the Greco-Turkish War of 1919–1922, the subsequent defeat of Greece, and the Treaty of Lausanne in 1923. That treaty contained a protocol, the population exchange between Greece and Turkey, which barred permanently the return of any prior Greek Orthodox refugees to their homes in Turkey, and required that any remaining Orthodox Christian citizens of Turkey leave their homes for Greece. The treaty also required that Greece's Muslim citizens permanently leave Greece for Turkey. Most of these Turks from Greece were used by the Turkish state to settle its now empty Greek Christian towns, but Turks from Greece did not wish to settle in Levisi due to rumors of ghosts of the Greeks killed there. The ghost town, now preserved as a museum village, consists of hundreds of rundown but still mostly standing Greek-style houses and churches which cover a small mountainside and serve as a stopping place for tourists visiting. The village is now empty except for tour groups and roadside vendors selling handmade goods. However, there is a selection of houses which have been restored, and are currently occupied. KOLMANSKOP is a ghost town in the Namib in southern Namibia, 10 kilometers inland from the port town of Luderitz. It was named after a transport driver named Johnny Coleman who, during a sandstorm, abandoned his ox wagon on a small incline opposite the settlement. Once a small but very rich mining village, it is now a tourist destination run by the joint firm Namibia De Beers. In 1908, the worker Zacharias Lula found a diamond while working in this area and showed it to his supervisor, the German railway inspector August Stauch. Realizing the area was rich in diamonds, German miners began settlement, and soon after the German Empire declared a large area as a Sperrgebiet, starting to exploit the diamond field. Driven by the enormous wealth of the first diamond miners, the residents built the village in the architectural style of a German town, with amenities and institutions including a hospital, ballroom, power station, school, skittle alley, theater and sport hall, casino, ice factory and the first X-ray station in the southern hemisphere, as well as the first tram in Africa. It had a railway linked to Luderitz. The town started to decline during World War II, when the diamond field slowly started to deplete. By the early 1950s, the area was in a severe decline. Hastening the town's demise decades earlier was the discovery in 1928 of the richest diamond-bearing deposits ever known, on the beach terraces 270 kilometers south of KOLMANSKOP, near the Orange River. Many of the town's inhabitants joined the rush to the south, leaving their homes and possessions behind. The new diamond find merely required scouting the beaches as opposed to more difficult mining. The town was ultimately abandoned in 1956. The geological forces of the desert mean that tourists now walk through houses knee-deep in sand. KOLMANSKOP is popular with photographers for its settings of the desert sands reclaiming this once thriving town, and the arid climate preserving the traditional Edwardian architecture in the area. Due to its location within the restricted area of the Namib Desert, tourists need a permit to enter the town. PYRAMIDEN is an abandoned Soviet coal mining settlement on the Norwegian archipelago of Svalbard, which became a popular touristic destination. Founded by Sweden in 1910 and sold to the Soviet Union in 1927, PYRAMIDEN was closed in 1998 and has since remained largely abandoned, with most of its infrastructure and buildings still in place, the cold climate preserving much of what has been left behind. Since 2007, there have been efforts to make it a tourist attraction. The town's hotel was renovated and reopened in 2013. In summer there is a population of caretakers. PYRAMIDEN lies at the foot of the Billefjorden on the island of Spitsbergen and is named after the pyramid-shaped mountain with the same name adjacent to the town. In Soviet times, the population was mostly Ukrainian, consisting of miners from Donbass and staff from Volyn. Owned by the state-owned Russian mining company Archikugol Trust, which also owns the settlement of Barentsburg, PYRAMIDEN once had over 1,000 inhabitants. Among its amenities were a cultural center with a theater, a library, art and music studios, a sports complex, and a cantina open 24 hours a day. It also had a primary school. The northernmost monument to Vladimir Lenin and the northernmost swimming pool are also located here. In 1996, a charter flight for Archikugol crashed on the approach to Svalbard with the loss of 141 lives. In 1998, the last coal was extracted from the mine and the last permanent resident left by October. Until 2007, PYRAMIDEN was practically a ghost town where, within the buildings, things remained largely as they were when the settlement was abandoned in a hurry. In 2012, Alexander Romanovsky became the first person to return to live in PYRAMIDEN, and has since been joined by 5 others. Romanovsky has called himself the world's most northern headbanger. On August 27, 2019, the world's northernmost film festival was held here, dedicated to the 100th anniversary of Soviet cinema. St. Elmo is a ghost town in Chaffee County, Colorado, United States. Founded in 1880, St. Elmo lies in the heart of the Sawatch Range, 32 kilometers southwest of Buena Vista, and sits at an elevation of 3,036 meters. Nearly 2,000 people settled in this town when mining for gold and silver started. The mining industry started to decline in the early 1920s, and in 1922 the railroad discontinued service. The community is listed on the National Register of Historic Places as the St. Elmo Historic District. It is one of Colorado's best preserved ghost towns. St. Elmo was originally named Forest City but was later changed because of the multitude of towns with the same name. The name St. Elmo was chosen by Griffith Evans, one of the founding fathers, who was reading a novel with the same title. The town was at its peak in the 1890s, when it included a telegraph office, general store, town hall, 5 hotels, saloons, dancing halls, a newspaper office, and a schoolhouse. The town's first and longest-running newspaper, The Street, Elmo Mountaineer, began reporting on the town's mining activities in August 1880 and ran until 1895. The Denver, South Park and Pacific Railroad line ran through St. Elmo. There were 150 patented mine claims within the area. The majority of the people who lived in St. Elmo worked at the Mary Murphy, Teresa C., the Molly or the Pioneer mines. The Mary Murphy mine was the largest and most successful mine in the area. The Mary Murphy mine recovered lots of gold while it was in operation. While the other mines eventually shut down, the Mary Murphy mine continued to operate until the railroad was abandoned in 1922. Once the mining industry shut down, St. Elmo drastically declined in population. Miners searched elsewhere for gold and silver, and the business district in St. Elmo closed down as well. Few people continued to live in the town. Postal service was discontinued in 1952 after the death of St. Elmo's postmaster. Thank you for being brave, well done. Let us look for more ghost towns. Take care.